Newly published study proves watching television dumbs down young children. This is a recent study published by nature.com. And the conclusion was this, that watching television for young people increases in total television time at 29 months were associated with subsequent decreases in vocabulary and math skills, classroom engagement, which is largely determined by attention skills, victimization by classmates, and physical prowess at kindergarten. So this study found that all those spheres, maths, vocabulary, even physical prowess, was negatively impacted by watching television at 29 months of age for these toddlers and young children. And of course, that correlates with something we reported a few weeks back, which was the report out of Yahoo, which showed that IQ in Western nations has dropped by a staggering 14.1 points over the course of the last 100 years. And of course, television has undoubtedly played its part in that dumbing down process, which segues into our next story. Newly discovered 8th grade exam from 1912 shows how dumbed down America has become. And when I first saw this story, I was skeptical because there was a heated debate about a similar story back from a couple of years ago about an 8th grade test from 1895, which was used to make the same point about dumbing down in schools. But many claim that was inaccurate because the test was actually directed at teachers and not students. It was hastily debunked. This one cannot easily be debunked, and it's quite shocking to say the least. It was an 8th grade test conducted by Bullitt County School District in 1912. And in this article, which is on Infowars.com from Michael Snyder, he links to the Bullitt County History website, which has a copy of the original test. Now listen to a couple of these questions and ask yourself how an 8th grader in 2013 would fare in this exam. One of the questions is, how many parts of speech are there? Define each. Another question is, locate the following countries which border each other: Turkey, Greece, Serbia, Montenegro, Romania. So this 12th grade test, and these are just two of the questions, there's literally dozens and dozens of them, talking about advanced geographical knowledge. 37% of Americans in 2013 can't even locate America on a world map. And we're talking about adults. This was aimed at 8th graders, and they're talking about identifying Serbia and Montenegro on a map. They're talking about defining all the different parts of speech, talking about mathematical equations and sums that are just mind-bogglingly difficult, even for adults nowadays, and yet they were being aimed at children back in 1912. And you know, the counter argument that always comes out when these kind of stories emerge is that, you know, these students were specifically studying to answer these questions at the time, so they'd be well versed in the material. They'd be completely prepared for the exam, whereas just reading it fresh today, we're not prepared for any of it. But it doesn't really wash with me. You know, I remember taking exams 17, 18 years ago when I was at a similar educational level. There's no way they were anywhere near this level of difficulty. And as we mentioned, the IQ, it's confirmed, has dropped 14.1 points. This is the deliberate dumbing down program that Charlotte Iserby has exposed many times on InfoWars. It's about changing education from exalting the best and the brightest to dragging everyone down to the lowest common denominator. You know, the exams have been made so easy nowadays that they have to do it because people wouldn't pass them. Kids are nowhere near as smart as they were 100 years ago, despite all our access to information at the click of a button. They're being dumbed down, and they're making the test easier to ensure that people pass them. And it's all deliberate because education now, whatever you believe it started as, isn't about teaching young people how to think. It's about teaching them how to regurgitate. And looking at this test from 1912 only bolsters that point. Final story tonight. Real or hoax? 1960s subliminal national anthem video says obey government. A creepy 1960s national anthem video features subliminal messages encouraging the viewers to obey, consume, and trust the government. And it sounds like something straight out of the 1988 science fiction film They Live. But is it genuine or is it a hoax?
Did you see the letters change at the bottom? Let's watch it again in even slower frame-by-frame motion. This video was shown signing off of television programming for the day throughout the 60s, and we know that during that time is the same exact time that the mass mind control MK Ultra project, the government covert operation, was going on in the United States. They were carrying it out on the American people, and that's been admitted. The CIA admitted it in, what, 1970? And there's even a speech where Bill Clinton apologized for it.
Now, if you watch the analysis of this video, which is in the YouTube version on the InfoWars article, you'll clearly see that when it's slowed down, the following text becomes visible. Trust the US government. God is real, God is watching. Believe in government God. Rebellion will not be tolerated. Obey, consume, obey, consume. Buy MK Ultra, buy MK Naomi. Worship, consume, obey, believe. Do not question government. So all these words are scrolling across. You can't see them at real speed, but if you slow it down, you can. So is it real or is it a hoax? Well, the debate still rages. There doesn't seem to be any definitive conclusion from what I've seen. But the fact that the messages so closely resemble those used in They Live, the classic dystopian sci-fi film, does suggest that it is a clever hoax. But no one's taken responsibility for it. Of course, the irony now is that this kind of subliminal messaging isn't really required as a primary tool of brainwashing. They still use it in advertising. But most of the social engineering now is done through storylines in popular TV shows, which they can use to sell any attitude, product, or demonize any political belief, as we see on a regular basis. But again, is it real? Is it a hoax? It's certainly creepy. And I invite you to go and watch that video on Infowars.com. Quote of the day now. Quote, our job is to give people not what they want, but what we decide they ought to have. That's Richard Salant, former president, CBS News. He said that back in the 70s. And, you know, now that Americans are finally becoming aware of to what degree exactly their media is controlled, we're now seeing polls that show 77% of the American public distrust mainstream television news. And that's one reason why more and more people are turning to InfoWars and other independent media outlets for a real alternative.